Morning, gents. It is the day before your final paper one of your school career, and I just want to consolidate the tips that I've given you for questions 2 to 5, and then give you some information on doing the comprehension. So the resources that you require for the comprehension, there's some very nice comprehension tips in the Survival Guide to English or your Beryl Lutrin book. But you'll also see here that I've got a picture of a stack of books. It's a slightly tricky thing with the comprehension because you have to be able to read with understanding, and some of that has to do with how much you've read at school over the last 12 years. If you have not been an avid reader, don't despair. We can still offer you some help today, and the place in particular where I can offer you some help today is just by doing an additional discussion on question analysis. It's quite important that you break down the question and you try and understand exactly what that examiner is looking for so that you can give them a suitable answer. And remember, guys, that to get a pass for your comprehension, basically my rule of thumb for my kids is that you should be trying to earn 1 mark in every single question, because there are always 12 or 13 questions in the comprehension. So if we can just aim for 1 mark of the 2 or 3, then we can be successful in our comprehension. So as we go into knowing your basics, remember that I've been through quite a couple of things with you regarding strategy for paper 1 over the last few videos. And my recommendation is actually that you start the paper at the back with the last question and move your way forward. And I've explained the strategic reasons for that. But basically, I want you to focus the time where your brain is fresh on areas like visual literacy, where there's quite a lot of low-hanging fruit where you can earn marks. And then I want you to come to question 1 at the end so that you can dedicate the time that you have left to it, and so that your brain is sort of geared into analyzing English questions, maybe even thinking in English by this stage of the paper. And if you don't finish, strategically the questions that you would have missed out are the most difficult questions in the paper, and so you shouldn't lose too many marks. Whereas if you rush through the visual lit and you don't attempt the language section at all, you can lose out on quite a lot of marks that were marks you could have studied. All right, so a big suggestion that I always give to my learners: reading time is so important for paper 1 because we only have 2 hours and we often don't finish. So my first hint today is consider getting familiar with the text during reading time. I would spend the whole of reading time when I was at school reading through my comprehension and just getting comfortable with the text, just trying to see what this comprehension is about, what the author's attitude is, what their purpose is, why did they write this comprehension, why did they write this text, what is it that they're trying to make me think about. And I dedicate reading time to that and then tackle the rest of the paper later. Then, if we go through the strategy that I've been discussing with you over the last 4 lessons, assess whether the question is text-rich or text-poor. All right? Now, with questions 1 and 2, your comprehension and your summary, they are always going to be text-rich. And for me, that means that you must analyze the questions first. All right? I know that you read the text during reading time, but as you tackle your comprehension, read the question and then search for the answer. And then read the next question and then search for the answer. And obviously, when you read the question, you're not just reading, you're analyzing. Remember, guys, that you come from a tech-based generation, a generation where reading lots of books is probably not something that most of you have done throughout your lives. And so when your brain sees a whole page of writing, your brain thinks, oh my goodness, this is so boring. And we need to control that thought. We need to nip it in the bud. So by having a pen in our hand and underlining and analyzing and making marks on the question paper as we go through the comprehension, you're sort of tricking your brain. into engaging the other senses and into making reading less boring. You're also engaging that tactile aspect of learning, really important for boys in particular. Okay, so I want you to analyze your question and make marks on the question paper as you go along. Very similar to if you were working on your cell phone, where you'd be swiping and tapping and that sort of thing, so that you engage your brain. And then in analyzing the question, you immediately know what you are going to be searching for. And the questions for a matric level English paper are always more or less in order of the beginning of the paper right through to the end. And so as you analyze your questions, you'll see that you're working your way through the text, but in bite-sized chunks, not having to deal with the whole thing all at once without having any sense of direction. All right. Now, when you tackle the question, when you analyze the question, and I've been through this for visual literacy, I just want to revise it again today. Every time we sit and look at a question, we break it down into 3 areas. And what I actually do is, as I'm going through my 3 areas, I make little marks, okay? So the first thing is we want to take note of the question words. And I tend to make a little arrow when I see a question word, or even perhaps underline it. In your generation, underlining the question word may be better. Then when it comes to my focus area, what this question actually requires me to look at, I want you to circle the focus area. Why circle? Because those focus area words are words you're going to have to look at over and over again, and they're probably the words that are going to come up in your comprehension itself. And so that can be a clue about which sentence you need to be really analyzing and working out in your text to find the answer. And then the last thing after you've circled the focus area is to identify your special instructions. And there, once again, you can put the arrow. The number one way that I find candidates who are getting under 60% lose marks in a comprehension is that they do not follow special instructions. So please, please, guys, break your question down. Make sure you are following the instructions. All right, so let's go into a little more depth in terms of analyzing the question. So we've spoken about the fact that the first thing you need to do is you need to have a look at your question words. When we look at the question word, there are 2 things that we're trying to figure out, guys. The first thing is how much must we write, okay? And are we searching for facts or are we giving our judgment? Sometimes you're just doing pure descriptive word, looking for something in the text and reorganizing it. But other times you actually have to form a critical opinion, you have to account for something, you have to give your judgment. So that's the purpose of the question word. Now, I'm not going to go through the meaning of different question words today, but I promise you, if you go and look at your LO notes, or you go and look at your LO textbook or study guide, the LO teachers always go through the meanings of different question words with you when they do study skills, and just go and revise those. What's the difference between identify versus discuss versus describe versus evaluate? You have that in your LO textbooks, or your English teacher might even have given you notes for it. Have an awareness of what different question words mean. That won't only help you in tomorrow's exam, it will help you in every subject for the rest of the exam period. Right. The second thing we look at is focus area, and I like making it the second thing in grade 12 when we're interpreting our question, because in English you usually have 2 focus areas. There are usually 2 things that you have to look at in a question. So a character and their relationship with someone else, or the speaker and then the speaker's attitude or intention toward the text. Very often there are 2 focus areas. Now, what is focus area? It's the thing that you need to concentrate on to be able to answer your question. So the actors, which people are you looking at? The facts that they want you to consider, all right? The ideas they want you to consider if it's opinion-based, or the relationships, all right? So your different things that you need to concentrate on. There could be 2. Consider words that you will be able to find in the text. Very often they give you words in quotation marks from the text. That's your focus area, guys. That's what you need to be thinking deeply about. Other times they'll give you the buzzwords from the theory that you've had to study, things like tone and diction. And then that's what you really need to concentrate on. And sometimes you might even spot the past paper, the focus area based on past papers that you've practiced. That's like, for example, when they ask you to talk about the speaker's attitude towards something in the text. Very often that's the kind of question that comes up over and over again. All right. And then the third thing you need to focus on, and I highlighted this in the previous slide, you need to look at special instructions. The specific aspects that you must adhere to so that you can earn your marks. What are the things that I have to do when I'm writing my answer so that the marker will consider putting down a tick? Now, guys, the first thing under special instructions is the mark allocation. So often I see candidates writing one sentence for a 3-mark question. There's just no way that you're going to get 3 marks. So please always have a look at your mark allocation and make sure that you are actually writing enough for me. All right? Writing enough means that you are, if it's for 1 mark, you need at least 1 sentence, 2 mark, 2 sentences, 3 marks, 3 sentences. Make sure you're giving adequate detail. After you've written a fact down, ask yourself, why is that true? And tell me why it's true with evidence from the text. When you've finished giving your evidence from the text, tell me, so what? Why is this fact important? And then you're likely to get your 3 marks. So give your idea, give me proof from the text, and then tell me why that proof is significant. What are the consequences? What's your opinion? So what? All right. The way that some of your teachers might have taught you to construct an argument during essay writing is that they would have taught you the Peel format. Now, when you are answering a comprehension question, my boys always have a giggle because it's a bit crass. I tell them that when you're doing your comprehension, you have to P. You have to give your point, you have to give an example from the text, and then you have to explain why it's true. So that can help you ensure that you're adhering to mark allocation. If we move to the next special instruction, paragraph and line references. If I tell you to give me an answer out of paragraph 7 and you give me the answer out of paragraph 8, it's wrong. You have not followed instructions. Don't lose marks carelessly. Put an arrow when they tell you to refer to paragraph so-and-so or line so-and-so. And at the end of the paper, when you're checking your paper, make sure your line and paragraph references are correct. Then, special instruction words. Use your own words. Substantiate your answer. Quote your answer. Give your own opinion, etc., etc. You would not believe how many times you guys lose marks because they're those special little words at the end of the question. Use your own words. And then what happens? You quote and you do not get the mark. So please pay attention to those special instructions they give you at the end of the question. I want to speak about quoting quickly. When you are quoting and they tell you use 4 consecutive words or use 7 consecutive words, often you guys lose the mark because you do not use consecutive words. Consecutive means one after the other, words that follow on from each other in the text. So when they tell you to use consecutive words, it's different to when they tell you to refer to diction. When they tell you to refer to diction, you can pick and choose words from all over the paragraph. But when they tell you to use consecutive words, they must be words that follow on from each other. In other words, a little phrase. And those little phrases, you'll find a phrase with the exact number of words that proves the point. Okay. And then, of course, your special buzzwords, words like diction, tone, imagery, attitude, purpose, they come up in the past paper. We've studied them for poetry and for visual literacy. When you see those words, remember what to speak about. Diction means word choice. Tone means feeling. Imagery, picture in your imagination, figure of speech. Attitude, the feeling of the particular person. The purpose, why did the person write this? Okay. So remember those for me. Let's have a look at an example.